The bakery owner sneered, telling the young girl that $10 wouldn't buy a cake and that her shop wasn't charity. Just a short while before, Zoe Turner had been at a recycling point, sorting through a week's worth of gathered bottles and cans. Despite the biting autumn wind chilling her through her light dress, she had been overjoyed when the attendant handed her $10. To her, it felt like a fortune, enough to buy a birthday surprise for her mother. However, inside the bakery, her optimism was fading. Zoe held her bag tightly, her heart racing as she approached the counter. She timidly told the clerk she had $10 for her mother's 30th birthday. Mrs. Jenkins responded with nothing but cruelty, mocking the girl's small amount of money and suggesting she buy a cake at a gas station instead. When Zoe pleaded for even the smallest cake, the woman accidentally, or perhaps carelessly, spilled hot coffee on the girl's arm. Instead of apologizing, the baker threatened to call security. Shaken and in pain, Zoe was about to leave when a well-dressed, somber-looking man entered the shop. While Mrs. Jenkins immediately changed her tone to be fake polite to the wealthy newcomer, the man, named Cole, focused only on the injured girl. Zoe, noticing the deep sadness in his eyes, asked him if he was lonely. This simple, innocent question seemed to touch something deep inside him. After learning that Zoe had spent all week collecting cans just to buy her mother a chocolate cake, Cole was moved. He looked at the beautiful cake Zoe wanted and decided to step in. He told the baker he would buy that specific cake and asked to add $10 worth of cookies as Zoe's own contribution to the purchase. Zoe was stunned by his kindness. Cole then revealed a surprising truth. It was his 39th birthday as well, and he had no one to share it with. He suggested they become birthday partners, turning a moment of cruelty into one of unexpected friendship. Cole proposed that they become birthday partners. Zoe was surprised, wondering if they would divide the dessert. He explained that she would give it to her mother, while he would simply be happy knowing it was part of his celebration too. After a brief pause, Zoe pulled out her hard-earned, wrinkled cash and offered it to him, insisting on contributing her share. Cole took the money with deep respect, acknowledging their joint effort, while Mrs. Jenkins, now visibly shaken by her own previous behavior, prepared the box. Zoe sat with Cole. Even though her dress was ruined by the coffee, her spirit had returned. She curiously asked why he was spending his birthday by himself. Cole admitted honestly that he had become so focused on other things that he had neglected his relationships, eventually finding himself completely isolated. Zoe, feeling for him, insisted that no one should be solitary on such a day. She invited him to her mother's small gathering the following day, mentioning her mother's belief that those who are lonely deserve cake the most. Touched by her kindness, Cole felt a flicker of hope and gratefully accepted. As they exited the shop and walked the fading gold of the Miltonville sunset, Zoe carried the cake box with extreme care. Cole offered a scarf to the shivering girl, but she politely refused, explaining that her mother taught her not to accept gifts she couldn't repay. To lighten the mood, Cole asked about the details of the upcoming party. Zoe laughed, explaining that while they wouldn't have balloons, ice cream, specifically mint chip, was a tradition. They walked into a modest, older neighborhood where the buildings showed signs of age but felt warm and authentic. Zoe then asked Cole about his own childhood birthdays. He took a moment to reflect, eventually recalling a special year when his mother had painstakingly crafted a train-shaped cake for him, a memory he hadn't revisited in many years. I gazed at it as if it were a work of magic. Zoe beamed, asking if his mother had baked for him every year. He paused, explaining that she had, right until her health failed. Zoe didn't press for details. She simply understood. She remarked that this was exactly why the cake was so important. Her own mother worked tirelessly, but always made time to read to her, and Zoe wanted to show her appreciation. Cole felt a wave of emotion, moved by the profound gratitude of a child who possessed so little yet offered so much. They reached a Commerce Street where Zoe pointed out her home, a red brick building with a noisy mailbox and stairs marked with colorful chalk drawings of stars and birthday wishes. At the third floor, Zoe asked him to wait while she alerted her mother. Moments later, Tamara appeared, her eyes filled with caution as she looked at the stranger in her hallway. Cole introduced himself respectfully, explaining how they met and why he had helped Zoe with the cake. Tamara was initially worried about her daughter interacting with a stranger, but Cole's sincerity began to bridge the gap. He explained that Zoe had noticed a sadness in him, and that her kindness had made his own birthday far better than he could have imagined. When Tamara realized he was a successful CEO, he insisted that his professional status was irrelevant. In that moment, he was just a man who didn't want to be alone. Eventually, Tamara invited him inside. Their home was modest and small, yet impeccably clean and decorated with a handmade birthday banner. As Zoe carefully placed the cake on the table, Tamara offered Cole a glass of lemonade and asked why a man with his resources would choose to spend time with him. Cole looked around the warm, hopeful room and replied that although he had acquired many things in his life, he had spent too long without the things that truly mattered. The silence was broken by Zoe's wide yawn, bringing a smile to her mother's face. Tamara told her it was time for bed, and the young girl headed to the bathroom. Tamara thanked Cole for walking them home and for the cake. As he prepared to leave, she jokingly advised him not to wear a suit if he returned the next day, as they preferred pajamas for birthday celebrations. Cole agreed with a grin. Walking down the stairs, he felt a rare sense of lightness. Not because of his wealth, but because a child with a massive heart had welcomed him into her life. The following afternoon, Cole arrived at the apartment in a casual flannel shirt and jeans, carrying daisies and mint chocolate chip ice cream. He also had a small, carefully chosen gift in his pocket. Zoe greeted him at the door wearing a glittery paper crown, thrilled that her birthday partner had actually shown up. Inside, the home was filled with the scent of pizza and candles. Tamara accepted the flowers with a surprised and genuine smile, placing them in a simple vase. The celebration was humble but filled with joy. They ate pizza and snacks while Zoe shared stories about her life in school. For the first time in ages, Cole forgot about his corporate world and simply enjoyed the moment. After dinner, Tamara placed 2 candles on the chocolate cake, one for herself and one for Cole, since his birthday was the day before. Zoe insisted they both make a wish. Looking at the warmth in the room, Cole made a wish that had nothing to do with business. Zoe served the cake with great pride and even gave Cole a paper crown to wear, officially making him part of their royal court. Tamara was impressed by how naturally he embraced the simple, heartfelt celebration. Cole adjusted his posture as Zoe, exhausted after her second piece of cake, rested her head on her mother's lap. Her lopsided crown remained in place as Tamara gently stroked her hair, noting that the girl hadn't stopped grinning since the previous evening. Cole admitted that he felt exactly the same way. As the child began to doze off, Tamara shared that Zoe had few memories of her father beyond his singing and his ability to comfort her. She noted that meeting Cole seemed to have opened a door for Zoe, helping her process her loss by adding a new positive presence to her life. Cole looked at the sleeping girl and confessed that he'd spent years hiding his loneliness behind his success, convinced that people only valued his wealth. However, this experience felt authentic and different. Tamara joked if it was just the sugar talking, but Cole knew it was deeper than that. When it was time to leave, he declined a slice of cake to go, preferring to keep the memory of the shared moment intact. As he stepped out into the night, he felt like he wasn't just returning to his house, but moving toward a new chapter in his life. The following Sunday, Cole returned to the apartment. He didn't bring expensive gifts. Instead, he arrived with some basic tools, a favorite children's book, and more ice cream. He felt a sense of belonging as he heard the domestic sounds of their home from the hallway. Tamara welcomed him in, her tired appearance reflecting the hard work of a single mother. Zoe, busy with her drawings, greeted him warmly and reminded him that every real family fridge needs art. Cole didn't argue. He simply agreed, feeling a profound sense of warmth as Tamara offered him a cup of coffee, signaling that he was now a regular part of their world. Cole offered to help with some chores, specifically looking at an old floor fan that Zoe had mentioned was making frightening noises. Tamara was skeptical, doubting a CEO would know how to fix appliances, but Cole jokingly replied that he was willing to trade his auditing skills for a chance to fix it. As he worked on the rusty machine, Tamara gave him a mug of coffee and promised him a lifetime of Sunday dinners if he succeeded. He laughed, noting that it was a far better deal than any he had ever negotiated in a boardroom. While Tamara cleaned and Zoe played, Cole focused on the broken fan. After some effort and a small spark, He finally got the blades to spin smoothly again. Zoe was delighted that he had fixed the monster, and a surprise Tamara realized she now owed him dinner. That night, they shared a simple meal of spaghetti and slightly burnt garlic bread. To Cole, the evening felt flawless despite its simplicity. After eating, Zoe insisted that they all sit together for family story time so Cole could read Charlotte's Web. As he read the classic tale, the atmosphere in the room changed. Tamara finally began to relax, and Cole felt a true sense of presence, not as a guest or a hero, but as a friend. By the time he finished, Zoe was fast asleep. Tamara shared that Zoe hadn't let anyone else read to her since her father passed away. At the door, Tamara invited him back for following Sunday, and Cole left feeling a deep, unfamiliar sense of belonging. However, as he walked away, his phone alerted him to a severe storm warning heading toward Miltonville. The weather report looked grim. Saturday afternoon brought warnings of flash floods and power outages, with the sky over the city turning a dark, bruised purple. As people rushed to prepare for the coming storm, Cole sat in his car, unable to focus on his earlier business meetings. His thoughts were entirely on Tamara and Zoe. When he called to check on them, Tamara mentioned they were preparing to hunker down with candles and basic supplies. Cole expressed a concern and urged them to move to a secure hotel downtown that had backup generators and better protection. However, Tamara firmly declined. She explained that while her apartment wasn't luxurious, it was their home, and she had already taken precautions like clearing drains and sealing windows. Cole insisted it was about their safety, but his persistence created a sudden tension. Tamara felt as though he was treating them like a charity project, and she made it clear that she took pride in the life she had built through her own hard work. She told him she wasn't looking for a handout. Even as Cole tried to explain, he was simply offering support. The conversation ended with a softer tone, but the distance between their perspectives remained. Tamara promised a call if the situation became dire. That night, the storm hit with full force, turning streets into torrents and causing widespread blackouts. Cole stayed awake through the night, anxiously monitoring the storm maps and worrying about Zoe and her mother in the dark. The storm didn't just arrive. It invaded Miltonville. By midnight, the rain had turned into a relentless assault, and the wind began to scream through the narrow gaps between the apartment buildings. Cole stood by his window, his face illuminated by the rhythmic flashes of lightning that turned the sky a sickly shade of violet. He tried calling Tamara's phone every 5 minutes, but the network had finally surrendered to the elements. The silence on the other end of the line was more terrifying than the thunder shaking his walls. He knew he couldn't stay in his tower while they were in the path of the rising water. Cole threw on his boots and a waterproof jacket, grabbed a heavy-duty medical kit, and a bag filled with high-energy food and fresh water. As he descended to the garage, his heart was drumming a frantic beat against his ribs. The drive was a nightmare. The city's drainage systems had failed, turning the main roads into dark, swirling rivers. His SUV groaned as it pushed through water that reached the middle of the doors, but he didn't slow down. He was driven by the image of Zoe, huddled in the dark, shivering in that thin purple dress. When he reached the street where apartment 3C was located, his headlights revealed a scene of chaos. Cars were floating, and the residents of the first floor were desperately trying to climb to higher ground. The power lines had snapped, sending blue sparks into the flooded streets. Cole parked on a small hill and stepped out, the freezing water immediately soaking him to the waist. He fought the current, using the walls of the buildings to keep his balance until he reached their door. Inside, the staircase was a funnel for the rain leaking from the roof. He ran up the 3 flights of stairs, his flashlight beam dancing wildly. When he reached their floor, he found the door to 3C standing open. The kitchen ceiling had partially given way, and water was pouring onto the table where they had shared cake only days before. He found Tamara and Zoe in the small bathroom, the only room without a window or leak. Tamara was sitting on the floor, her back against the door, holding a sleeping Zoe tightly. Her eyes were wide with terror, but when she saw Cole, the defensive wall she had built around herself finally crumbled. He didn't say, "I told you so." Instead, he knelt in the water, took Zoe into his arms, and helped Tamara to her feet. They spent the next 6 hours huddled together in the hallway of the building, the only dry spot left. To keep Zoe calm when she woke up, Cole started telling her stories. Not about business or money, but about a little boy who grew up with everything but felt like he had nothing until he met a girl with $10. He spoke of how that $10 was the most valuable currency he had ever seen because it was minted with pure love. By dawn, the city was a quiet, soggy ruin, but they were safe. The storm had taken Tamara's furniture and her modest belongings, but it had solidified something unbreakable between the three of them. In the weeks that followed, Cole didn't just offer financial help. He became a permanent fixture in their lives. He moved them into a beautiful, sturdy home nearby. Not as a charity project, but because he couldn't imagine waking up without knowing they were safe. He helped Tamara enroll in the business courses she had always dreamed of, recognizing that her grit and intelligence were her greatest assets. Months later, on a crisp spring morning, they returned to Jenkins' bakery. The shop was crowded, and Mrs. Jenkins looked as sour as ever. When they reached the front of the line, Zoe didn't look down at her feet this time. She stood tall, her hand in Cole's. She placed a $10 bill on the counter, the very same one Cole had kept framed in his office, and returned to her for this special day. "A chocolate cake, please," Zoe said with a confident smile. "The one with the buttercream flowers. And I have enough to pay for it myself." Mrs. Jenkins looked at the girl, then at the powerful man standing behind her, and finally at the mother who looked back with pride. She realized that she wasn't just selling a cake. She was witnessing the closing of Circle. As they walked out of the shop, the sun was warm on their faces. Cole looked at Tamara and then at Zoe, who was carefully carrying the box. He realized that the void in his heart, which he had tried to fill with success for 40 years, was finally overflowing. They weren't just partners in a cake anymore. They were partners in a life that was finally, truly beginning.